Akash, Ritendra, I do work in finance, but I'm a big fan of your book. So, two questions. One is, and the reason I'm a big fan is you take us on this journey for 20, 30 years, which is very visual. And it's, as you said, the few different genres that you kind of fit into this, one being history, one being a family journey. And it's just brilliant. You don't know what to expect as you go through it, and it shifts. So, lovely book. Couple of my two questions. The first one is when you start with the history of Auroville, you talk about, you kind of set this context of colonial India. It's set in Black Town. Can you touch a little bit about like what attracted these people in that era to come to middle of nowhere, follow this person who is not really a traditional messiah. He's not like I don't know, Vivekananda, who comes to New York and speaks. He's not known for any new theology. So what attracts it? Force of personality? Is it just the time? Is it organic? Like, what is it that drew people initially to middle of nowhere in colonial India to this guy?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, and I think the easy answer is that it's a combination of forces. But I think that the era was a huge thing, of course, right? It was an era of searchers. And I mean, I say that somewhere in the book where I say that we always all have the utopian impulse. I mean, anybody who wakes up in the morning wishing for a better world has a utopian impulse. But as I say, some moments in history seem to provide more scaffolding for those impulses, right? Where it seems more almost normal to be abnormal and to sort of quit, drop out of the world the way, I was referring to John Walker does. So that moment in the 60s is, and in some ways Auroville comes at the tail end of it, is just populated. The world is full of these searchers, these questers, these seekers, and these early Aurovillians are all searching for alternatives. And I think, so they go all over the world. Some of them end up with the Maharishi. I mean, we all know that they head towards the east looking for spirituality. Some of them end up with Maharishi. Some of them end up in Osho. But some of them end up in the ashram with Sri Aurobindo and the mother. To what extent they're specifically attracted by that specific version of yoga, I think it's mixed. I think some of them have read the works. I mean, Aurobindo is in my view, a phenomenal philosopher, but very hard to read and difficult and complex. So I don't think everybody who shows up there has really digested everything he said and understood it. Some have, and some have read kind of introductions, if you will, to his work. There's a Frenchman in my book called Bernard who writes a book called The Adventure of Consciousness, which is a sort of, I don't want to say a simplified version, but it's an introduction to Sri Aurobindo's teachings, and a lot of people read that book and come there. So I think the moment plays a huge part. A lot of the early people who end up there are French. Pondicherry was a former French colony. France was going through its whole thing, right? May 1968. Like, a lot of those people are fed up with society. They want something new. They hear about this French woman running an ashram in Pondicherry, and they end up there.
It's fascinating, right? I would love if you write another book which kind of, there is no one answer, as you're saying. It's just all these people coming to this place in an era.
Yeah.
We don't have media. We don't know who he is. He's really hard to understand. So I think that's...
Yeah. Well, they're finding his books. They're finding his, it's interesting because I've read sort of like letters from people, even earlier, there was a Margaret Wilson, who was the daughter of President Wilson, who actually ends up in the ashram in, I believe it's the late 30s, and dies there in the 40s. So she was living here in New York. She had basically been the first lady in the White House because her mother was dead. So she discovers Aurobindo in the New York Public Library, and then sort of goes from there and starts writing to him. But she goes there. So this has been going on for a while. They're finding his books, yes, pre-internet. And then there was this, when you say writing more, that there's this, I don't know if you know about the Hippie Trail that existed at the time. It was this fascinating, you can look it up. There was the route that led through Turkey, through Iran, through Afghanistan, through Pakistan, that they were all following. Many of these people followed that hippie trail. They tell these amazing stories of being in Kandahar or whatever in the 60s and the 70s, and of course that all fell apart with what first the the Iranian Revolution and then the invasion of Afghanistan, the Hippie Trail sort of fell apart. And that's actually one of the many reasons why that whole influx of sort of spiritual seekers and hippie people also dies out. One of the many reasons, along with like Reagan and Thatcher and all of that in the 80s, but it sort of dies out in that era.
Got it. Then my second question was actually about Margaret Wilson, because I don't see, to me it's a huge big deal for American president's daughter to live and die there, right? I mean, she died there. But that wasn't a big part of your book in the early history, so she didn't have much of an impact, or like, is she lost in history? Like, what's...
It's interesting because I've been thinking of writing an article about Margaret Wilson, so it's good to know there's at least one person that would be interested in it. It was a different time, right? It would have been complicated to fit in the book because she was there in the late 30s and then died in the early 40s, whereas this book mostly happens in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So it would have been complicated to fit her in. There are definitely, resonances with John Walker, this very privileged East Coast person that sort of like it's not enough. Their world is not, they have everything, but it's not enough for them, and they're looking for something more, and they're looking for something different, and they end up there. I don't think she had a huge impact in that sense. I think she dropped out. She moved there. Her letters are available. Like I was just reading them in the archives in the ashram. Fascinating letters back to her friends and family here. She was an interesting woman. And she also, like John Walker, I'm giving her a bit of the plot, but she died because she got sick and denied herself medical care. And her family wanted to bring her back to see the best doctors in the US. And she says, well, the doctors in America can cure me, but what can they do for my soul? And she ends up dying.
You should definitely write it, because Woodrow Wilson, when you go to Woodrow Wilson's house, they don't know that she went to India.
Yeah.
They kind of have a picture, and they don't know that she changed her name she took the name Nishtha.
She took the name Nishtha.
So I think that would be something I would definitely read. And my daughter's name is Nishtha as well. So.
Okay, good. Two readers for the article. Good. Thank you.
soft and only you, lost and lonely you, just like